I'm pretty excited. I'm pretty excited because the thing is, like, I feel like a ninja sometimes, and not just because I'm wearing a black jumpsuit, but because there are some certain tricks that come to eating out that aren't always acknowledged. And that's what we're going to unpack today. Tonight, today, whenever you're watching this, we're going to unpack how to eat out and still lose weight. Yes, that is a true sentence, and it can happen. But it's going to take some wisdom, and we're going to unpack that wisdom as we find it in 2 Timothy 1:17. Today's verse, today's scripture, today's mindset is coming from 2 Timothy 1:17. And it is as such. For God did not give us a spirit of timidity, but a spirit of power, of love, and of self-discipline. It's only one verse, so I will repeat it. 2 Timothy 1:17. For God did not give us a spirit of timidity, but a spirit of power, love, and self-discipline. Now, when I read that, it's like a tank first. It's like bringing in the artillery. It's like bringing a gun to a knife fight. But if you're a Christian, why are you going to a knife fight? That's another story for another time. But it is such a massive verse. It's like, I'm just going to go eat. Why do I need this? Well, to understand why this is so important, I want to approach it from this perspective. I'll ask you a question. I'll assume that 99% of you won't know the answer because y'all ain't in here, and that's probably for the best. I'll answer the question, and then I'll make the point. But I'm going to ask the question, and if you happen to get it right, I will send you like a coffee mug or something. When you go to watch a hockey game, how many teams are playing? Or when you go to watch a football game, how many teams are playing? You know what? Type it in the chat. I want to see if anyone gets what I'm thinking. This is me waiting. I see some answers. People are typing. You can just use the number. You don't have to write it up. I've got 2 against each other, but everyone. I think the answer is 2. So is that a 2? There are 2 teams on the field or the rink? Okay, everyone's shaking their head. Okay, the answer is 3. And I learned this because I was an ice hockey official for about 4 years. And they were very clear that when you step on the ice or you step on the field, there are 3 teams. There's Team A and Team B playing each other. And then there's the team of officials who have control of the game. And the game that A and B are playing are way different than the game that Team C is playing, the officials. And a lot of people don't recognize that or realize that. And it's with that very mindset that I want to approach eating out. Because when you eat out, Shannon does win. Shannon wins all the time. Shannon's awesome. I want to approach it from this mindset of there being sort of 2 games within the game as it pertains to eating out. Because this is where I feel the division of eating out and losing weight starts. And so I want to address that so we can bring it back together. The misconception for a lot of people is that when we go to eat out, that the restaurant is on our side. I will say it again. There's a misconception that when we go to eat out, that we have the same goals and end game in mind as the restaurant does. But the truth is, they couldn't be further apart. And so let's unpack that for a moment. Because when we go out to eat, some of our goals would include decent food, good enough. Same with fast, like quick enough. Good value, okay. Nourishment, that should be the top of everyone's list, but quite often, nourishment is sort of third or fourth on the list. It's kind of like nourishment when you go out to eat, unfortunately for a lot of people, holds the same place as the how much money I'm going to give to charity if I win the lottery conversation. Like, you're going to win the lottery. Okay, new car, new house, gas, student debt. And then it's like, give to charity. That's kind of where nourishment is. And that's unfortunate, but we'll also unpack that in a moment. But our goals are typically those things. But what are the goals of the restaurant? Well, the restaurant serves really, at the end of the day, one purpose: make money. That is the goal of the place where you go out to eat. And so, how do they typically achieve that? Well, one, perceived value. Everything that a restaurant does is through the lens of perceived value. And quite often, that is done by enormous portions or seemingly cheap add-ons. But another way that they're doing that underneath the surface, and it definitely depends, and it's more prevalent in the chain places, but lower quality ingredients. So, when you think hamburger, maybe you're thinking like, yeah, it's going to be like an 85-15. It's going to be great. And it's like, no, it's like a 65-35. Like, it's like, it just made the FDA approval to be food. And when you contrast that and you're like, wait a minute, I thought we were on the same team. I'm coming here for some quality and value food. And they're like, money. But we don't quite realize that a majority of the time. And so this is where the divide starts. The divide starts with us understanding and acknowledging that when we go out to eat, we have genuinely different motives. We're looking for something, the restaurant is looking for something else. Far too often, the restaurant wins because they get our money. And far too often, we leave feeling bloated, sad, overweight. Like, don't get me wrong. We may have that like 5 to 10 minute sort of like dopamine hit of carbs, like carb coma. But that 5 to 10 minutes is quickly overshadowed by how our gut feels, and then how we feel when the scale comes, and how we feel when we realize that we were borderline gluttonous, and did we really eat with Jesus in mind? So as we start to see the divide, it then begs the question, okay, so yeah, there's a problem, I get it, but what can we do to actually solve that? Well, I'm going to bring it back around, because now that we've sort of can see that the mountain we're trying to scale, why 2 Timothy 1:17 is so powerful. And so I'm going to read that again just to kind of bring that to the top of the mind. For God did not give us the spirit of timidity. That's our God. So he's already like, this is truth. Like, he did not give us a spirit of timidity, but rather a spirit of power, of love, and of self-discipline. And I want to unpack that for a minute, because quite often, a lot of us either feel or act like we're powerless when we go out to eat. Like, I had to get fries. I had to do what they told me to do. But you don't. Not only because you're the customer, but also because God didn't give you a spirit of timidity, but of power. And that's not saying to be a jerk. That's not being like, yo, somebody gave me some cauliflower. Like, no, like, that's not being rude. But it's saying, well, if the kids can have apples as a side, can I have apples as a side? Well, the timid person wouldn't ask, but we're not timid people. As followers of Christ, we've got the power. But do we have the will? And that's where this starts to sort of either break down or build us up. Because if God gave us a spirit of love, then wouldn't it make the most sense to eat in a way that shows that you love yourself? Wouldn't it make sense to eat in a way to love and honor God, wouldn't it make sense to eat in a way that actually nourishes your body? And then think of all the benefits of that. And if you take it from the transverse of that, by eating in a way that shows yourself love, then you're not going to have all the regret and fear of what this could lead to. Or, sorry, we keep it real here, round two, when the bathroom comes into play and nobody wins, like when you eat in a way that you love yourself, that reflects God's love for you, you don't have to worry about that. And so, did you notice that we really unpacked a path to do this well without even talking about self-discipline? I don't want to skip over that, because I feel like far too many people dwell on pushing themselves towards more willpower or pushing themselves towards being more disciplined. And yeah, that's not a bad thing. However, as we've talked about before, and I will share again, there are studies that have been shown that we only have a finite amount of willpower. So what happens when we don't have the willpower, or we don't want the self-discipline? Well, that's where we really have to take the power and love of God to not only control the emotions, but be stronger than the emotions. So my hope is that when you start to see this, we're making a really strong case of how we can eat appropriately, even before we discuss the God-given right of self-discipline. We're just starting with the power of the cross and the love that we can have for ourselves. But we also do have that right to self-discipline. And so let's start to unpack some strategies of what to do and then how to bring that to fruition. So 3 what to do's when you're eating out. First, get yourself off of autopilot. And what does this mean? This basically means don't just take things as they are. When you roll up to a value menu, you can make changes. You're the customer. You are always right. Again, as a follower of Christ, you're not always a jerk, but you are always right. And you're able to ask for certain things. But you have to do it. You have to acknowledge that the power that comes from Christ isn't you taking things at face value or as they are, because this is where you've got to remember, you're on a different team than that menu. That menu wants something way different from you than you want from it, especially if you're trying to lose weight. So step 1, get off of autopilot, be present in the decision making, and actually look at what's a possibility. Number 2, understand their game and believe their lies. Now, I am sorry, that's going to sound harsh, but somebody is lying here. And maybe it's us to ourselves, or maybe it's them to us. Being that they're a billion-dollar industry that's spent on marketing, I'm going to give ourselves some grace and put it on them. But I will also say that as we learn, it's going to start to be on us. But what do I actually mean by understand their game and don't believe their lies? Well, the whole concept of fast food is that it's faster than what we can make for ourselves. But if you ever go and you sit, or if you actually just take out your app and you order it and you wait, it's pretty amazing how quick you can just open a thing of tuna and throw it on a salad. Or if you get the pre-grilled chicken, just throw that on a salad. Or if you just don't feel like salad, have some chicken and vegetables. Or if you're a rice fan, holla, Uncle Ben's. I don't know if that's racist right now, but it's a thing still. Not trying to be, but it's still a brand. Uncle Ben's has minute rice. The lie in all of this that we've allowed ourselves to believe is that fast food is somehow quicker than what we can make on our own. And that is a lie. And there's no greater way to prove it than when you're sitting in a fast food line waiting for something to happen with a 5 and an 8-year-old behind you. That's when you understand just how long this process really takes. But it's not true. It's not faster food. You make a sandwich at home, how quick is that? You have a banana, you have an apple. I could literally ramble on with multiple better options nutritionally that take less time. But the point in all of this is that fast food isn't faster. than the healthy options we can make for ourselves or pack for ourselves. So understand their game and don't believe their lie. Step into that power. And the third thing, in terms of what to do, is live for the nourishment. This is where you have to sort of combine all three: the self-discipline, the love, and the power that's associated with Christ. Because quite often when we go out, it's a treat, and it should be a treat. It's not something that should happen all the time, because it's some of the lowest quality food. And if you love yourself to the point that God loves you, that He sent His Son for you, then you should treat yourself with the dignity and respect of not eating out all the time, because it literally kills you. But beyond that, live for the nourishment. Your body is hungry and or it is thirsty. It is crying to you for nutrients. Please give them nutrients. Now, you may have experienced this phenomenon if you're a fast fooder, as I have been known to be in past lives. But have you ever eaten fast food and then literally like an hour later, you're still hungry? And you're like, what just happened? I just ate a value meal. I'm supposed to be full, and I'm even more hungry now. What actually happens there kind of goes back to something we talked about 5 minutes ago, which is the quality of food when you eat out, typically anything that's a drive-through, is so low and so filled with preservatives that the amount of actual nutrients per capita is so tiny. So your body will eat that and then go, great, of the 100% that you gave me, I can literally use 35% of it. So I'm going to take that 35% of it, and then I'm going to process this 65% as waste. Most of that will get stored as fat because we're sitting down and not using it up. So an hour later, we're still hungry. Why? Well, because 65% of our nourishment was missing from our choice. And so the cycle perpetuates. And we buy into that by saying, well, that's okay. I'll just value size it to get more. Okay, well then maybe you bump up to 60%. But you're still not getting the nourishment your body's crying out for. So what to do to start this process in the right way? Get off of autopilot. Don't buy into their game. Don't believe the lies. And start eating for nourishment. So knowing what to do, how do we actually start to do this? Well, and I hate to say this, but step one would be common sense, which quite often is overrun by emotion, but I'll bring it back with the power of Christ. Apples versus French fries. What do you think your body's going to use for fuel more? What do you think has more nutrients? Salad versus refined cheeseburger. What do you think your body's going to use more of? Grilled chicken versus crispy chicken, which is the Halo-friendly version of saying fried chicken. So what fascinates me quite often is just how intelligent people are who struggle with this. Because for a lot of people, they know what to do. They know these things, but they're too busy not being present, or they're too busy buying into the lie, that common sense gets overshadowed by emotion. And that's where we really need to bring in the power of 2 Timothy 1:7 by understanding that we no longer have to be timid with this process. We have power, we have love, we have self-discipline. But the first way is to do this is through common sense. The second way would be if you went with the kids' meal. Now, here's a fun fact. A, I can't spell because I didn't type well into the chat. But B, if you were to go back to the point where McDonald's started, what is the original value meal size that McDonald's started is now the kids' meal? Like, think about that. What is the kids' meal today is what started as the number one value meal for McDonald's. Which means if you ever want to know the instructions on how to use McDonald's, it's the kids' meal. Anything beyond that, you're not following the directions. Shame on you, rebel rule breakers. But think about that for a minute. When you go to McDonald's, is your first inclination to get the kids' meal? Probably not. No. But that's literally what launched the empire, because that was the value meal back in the day when this all started. So the second thing is if just you're too overwhelmed or too overrun, and you're like, I just want to get something. Kids' meals are always a great option for a few reasons. One, more appropriate portions. But two, the kids' meals are more prone to give you healthier choices. But think about that, because that's where the love should come from. Because if you don't love yourself enough to treat yourself the way you treat the kid, then isn't there a disconnect there as well? Because, and we talked about this a few times before, like if your kid was like, I want to have a dessert after every meal, you'd be like, no, that's a bad decision. And as the adult in this scenario, I'm not going to allow you to do that because I love you too much. Then why do we do that to ourselves? So option number two of how to make this happen is to go with the kids' meal, because that will give you a more appropriate portion size. That will also give you typically healthier options, because you can already make the choice of fruits or vegetables or apples or water. And you don't have to feel like you have to give in to what they're asking. If you're not at a place that has a drive-through and it's a nicer establishment, understand that you can just cut the meal in half. So the third part of how to is if you're at a place like Red Lobster or wherever you like to dine, again, that doesn't have a drive-through, right off the bat, going into it, know that you're going to eat half the meal, because that's the appropriate serving size. What they're starting to do now is they're starting to list the calories on the menu. And if you ever want to just really, really inform yourself, look at how much or how many calories some of these meals have. 1,600 calories for a lunch, 2,024? It's genuinely ridiculous. As the kids say today, you need to be woke. But for real, get off of autopilot. Know that you're going to eat half of the meal, which, bonus, saves you money. Because now you're getting 2 meals for the price of 1. That's a pro tip, like I talked about before. Ninja, you're welcome. But to piggyback on that thought, or maybe even just make a separate thought, is don't fall into the trap of add-ons. And then what you're thinking, well, like, what's an add-on? Well, if your meal itself is at 1,600 calories and they offer you an appetizer or chips, they're basically offering you a second meal. Would you ever say, hey, I'm going to have 2 meals for dinner tonight? Probably not, hopefully not, especially if weight loss was your goal. But when we go out to eat, far often that happens. Yeah, I'll have an appetizer, and then I'll have a meal, and then have a dessert. Great, 3 meals. We had a hat-trick dinner. 3 dinners in 1. But how often do we do that? The better question, hopefully, is how often did we do that? Because now we understand that there's 3 teams involved. There's 2 teams playing on different sides of this. There's what we want. One can make the argument there's what God wants for us. And then there's what the restaurant wants. And we're all playing the same game, but with different rules. So to recap in all of this, what will break the patterns? 1, get off of autopilot. Be aware of what your options are. You don't have to be the victim to their menu. You are in charge. 2, understand the game. Don't believe the lies. Appetizers are another meal. You wouldn't, if someone told you they were going to have 2 meals for dinner, hopefully you'd stop them. You should have the same love and respect for yourself. God does. So don't fall into those lies. Also, it's not as quick as you think. Again, you want to test that truth, babysit some kids, take them out to eat. See how long that meal takes to get to you. Number 3 is live for the nourishment. When you're hungry, your body's not asking for food. Your body's asking for nourishment. Quite often it gets nourishment through that food. But when you're eating out, quite often that food is laced with a lot of preservatives, which is not nourishment. And how do we start to do that? 1, common sense. Be wise and brave enough to not allow the emotion to overcome the situation. Detach the want from the need. 2, get the kids' meal. The kids' meal is the flagship offering. It's an appropriate size portion if you're going to go down that path. And by default, it typically gives you healthier sides. 3, if you're not going to a place that has a drive-through, just know that you're going to eat about half the meal. That's the appropriate serving size. And again, bonus, meal for later. And 4, don't fall into the add-ons. Don't fall into the just a dessert for $1. Yeah, but if you keep having to buy new pants, or if you have to keep going to the chiropractor, how much is that $1 dessert really costing you? You want a second meal? No, then you don't want an appetizer. Do you want a third meal? No, then don't have the chips. Don't fall for the add-ons, because remember, these are the stealth plays that keeps their game winning and keeps us losing, but not in the losing we want to. This is why I feel 2 Timothy 1:7 is the appropriate verse for this mindset. Because it's a heavy verse. It's a powerful verse. It is a canon verse. It's a let's conquer something kind of verse. Because it reminds us that we're not timid. It reminds us that through God we have power, we have love, and we have self-discipline. We simply need to use them.